Welcome in to the Rockies Insider. I am your host, Patrick Lyons, giving you the details on the home opener Friday, Coors Field, game number 1 in Denver. The Philly series as well did not work out well. The starting pitching, otherworldly great, maybe a little lucky, but still earned run average wise, been very, very good. Bullpen, not so much. Offense, not so much, except for Hunter Goodman. We'll dig into the details. If you were watching some of Thursday's game, you saw that the Rockies did lose 3-1 to the Philadelphia Phillies to polish off their own 3-game sweep. They got swept by the Phillies. Once again, have not won at Citizens Bank Ballpark since 2023. It's 9 consecutive losses in Philadelphia. And yet, as not great, there were some poor moments. I don't know if I can truly say it was a poorly played game by the Rockies. I think it was, but when you can hold the opposing team to 1 run for the majority of the game, and even still, when the bullpen falters, it's only 1 run at a time. When you've only given up 3 runs, you haven't been atrocious. That being said, not great for Colorado on Thursday, and yet they were in a position where they could have won. The go-ahead run was at the plate multiple times. The go-ahead run was at first base. They loaded the bases in the 9th inning with a rally against lefty Jose Alvarado with a chance to steal a game, avoid an upset, feel good about going back home to Denver 2-4. Hey, you won 1 game in each of those series, but alas, no, it did not play out that way. Rockies are now 1-5, tied for their worst 6-game start to any season. They began last year that way. And that poor string of play continued far beyond just the first 6 games. 2005, 2008, also a 1-5 record. In the chat, if you've got a question or a comment, drop it in so I can go ahead and give you a little bit of credit for hanging out and giving me momentum here on the Rockies Insider. Vincent saying Rockies starting pitching was very solid all series, pitched out of tight situations several times. That's not something you can count on. You simply can't count on pitching well in a jam. It's going to come back to bite you at some point. But so far for Rockies starters, it hasn't come back to bite them. I think probably the luck has run out and the bullpen has gotten unlucky in sorts. So Vincent, presumably a Phillies fan, I know there's a lot of Rockies fans that can appreciate how you're showing the Rockies starters some love, because Kyle Freeland on Wednesday pitched really well. Antonio Senzatella was interesting, to say the least. I don't know if he's the escape artist, if he's the magician, if he's the crossing guard, because the way he's able to navigate traffic. But Antonio Senzatella, he's been known for this throughout his career, spraying base hits all around the field, pitching to contact, not getting a strikeout when maybe he needs it, although he was able to get at least 1 on Thursday. But through the first 4 innings, he had given up 8 hits and yet had not allowed a single run. Got a double play in there. Through 8 1/3 innings pitched, he had allowed 17 base hits, again, with no runs allowed. He ended up with 19 total hits between his first 2 starts. It's the most hits any pitcher has ever surrendered in their first 2 outings of a season without allowing an earned run since the invention of the earned run, since 1913. Yes, because at a certain point, hey, if you gave up that run, you gave up that run. And then, pitchers, I imagine, spoke up and said, well, hold on a second. Should I be charged with that if my left fielder drops the ball, or if my catcher lets a ball go through his legs? Certain things should not be charged to me. Or if a guy reaches on what should be a routine 6-3 out, he's on first base, shortstop made the error. Should that really get charged against me? So since the invention of the earned run, only Antonio Senzatella has allowed 19 base hits with no earned runs allowed. And only 3 other times has there been a pitcher that has done it for any 2-game span. In the last 95 seasons, only 2 pitchers had ever, at any point in the year, 19 hits and 0 earned runs allowed. Jaime Navarro, Stan Bonson, and Bill Lee in 1938. Not Spaceman Lee, different Bill Lee. But he was able to get out of those jams. And as Vincent said in the chat, escaping a lot of traffic was great until it caught up to him. For Senzatella, he allowed a run, but it was unearned. So he still kept that pristine 0.00 ERA. Cooper in the chat, honestly, will this ever get better? If you're talking about the Rockies, yeah, I think they will, because they're not going to continue to play. Gosh, I don't even know what their winning percentage is right now, like 200. They're going to win their games at home. They're going to be close to 500. That's just how they go about it. In a way, it is small sample size, right? It's only 6 games, but also it is a lot of what I think people expected out of this team. Now, we haven't seen Brenton Doyle catch fire. We've only seen Hunter Goodman with 2 home runs and Mickey Moniak coming off the bench with a pinch hit home run. So there's going to be power there, and they're not going to be as bad in some ways as they've been. Same can be said about the starting pitching. It's not going to continue to be as good or as lucky as it's been, and the bullpen is going to end up being at least a little bit better. So overall, you're not going to see the team be on a win one every 6 days kind of pace. It's just not going to happen. Wild the Innocent, thanks for joining, bud. Second base isn't looking solid. Maybe just needs more play together time. I mean, that's what happens when you add somebody late in spring, like a Tyler Freeman. There are guys around him. There's someone to the left in Michael Tolley at first base. There's someone to his right, Gold Glove Award winner Ezekiel Tovar. So those things still need to get figured out. We haven't really had much of an issue in the outfield, but I mentioned it in the final week of spring training. Brent Doyle, another Gold Glove Award winner, they will figure it out. But in the path to figuring it out, getting acclimated to Sean Bouchard, Jordan Beck, now in left field instead of right field where he had been for a majority of spring training because Nolan Jones was in left, Mickey Moniak out of the blue, and then Nick Martini. So these are not players that are used to playing together. And so you don't have that same momentum. There's a certain amount of traction that they have to build up over time, and they're just not at that spot yet. And that's going to be a disadvantage for changing the complexion of your team so late in spring training to try and maybe get a little bit better. You could argue you've just negated all of that because of how long it takes to really familiarize yourself with your teammates, not even off the field, but certainly on the field. And at second base, it's going to be a while. I think second base could be a somewhat of a troublesome position for the Rockies with Estrada out with the wrist injury. He's going to be out, I believe, at least 2 months. And even that, might be cautious. It could end up being a lot more than that. It really could be. So it's going to be Freeman, it's going to be Farmer, and it's going to be Ade Amador when he finally gets an opportunity. His 2025 campaign in AAA, first time with the Isotopes, has been going well so far. So there's going to be a lot of growing pains over at second base. So be patient with that. Growing pains again in the outfield. Mickey Moniak getting the second start in a row. Him and Nick Martini started on Wednesday and Thursday. Now, Moniak made a 2-base error on a dropped fly ball. It was a little bit windy out there, and the fans were definitely getting on Mickey Moniak because Moniak was the first overall pick in the 2016 MLB draft, and he was selected by the Phillies. And it didn't really work out for Philadelphia. It did in some ways, which I'll get to in a second, but that dropped fly ball ended up coming around to score. That's why it was an unearned run for Antonio Senzatella. But I had to look it up. Moniak has played parts of 38 different games at Citizens Bank Park, his second most of any ballpark behind only Angel Stadium. So you would have hoped he would have been somewhat familiar with the outfield there. But again, I think it was more of a swirling winds type situation in the afternoon there in Philadelphia. Harper, RBI double right after that, ended up scoring Kyle Schwarber. Moniak, did his best to make up for it, did have a triple earlier in the game. The first of the season for the Colorado Rockies. But as I said, Phillies fans, all over Moniak every time he would come to the plate. Disappointed that their first overall pick in 2016 out of high school, out of La Costa Canyon High School, didn't provide more for them on the field. That being said, in 2022, he was traded to the Angels for Noah Syndergaard. Remember him? Remember Noah Syndergaard? Remember Thor? 32 years old. Only 32 years old. This guy feels like he still should be in the majors, right? He didn't play anywhere in 2024. Dumbfounded. I don't know. Players are getting washed up quicker and quicker, it feels like, in the last 5 to 10 years. It's pretty wild. But Syndergaard was a great contributor for the Phillies in the postseason more than down the stretch, but still postseason run to the World Series in 2022. That's thanks in part to Noah Syndergaard and to Mickey Moniak, who was a big trade chip there. So Moniak in 2016, first overall, as I said, out of high school. That was just not a really good draft whatsoever. Rockies at number 4 took Riley Pint. Obviously didn't work out, but hasn't really worked out too well for a lot of players. There are 3 guys that have had a decent amount of success. I'll phrase it that way. Decent amount of success between 7 and 8 wins above replacement. Cal Quantrill, Cole Reagans, Gavin Lux, all 3 of them not with the team that drafted them. Quantrill was drafted by the Padres, Reagans by the Rangers, Gavin Lux by the Dodgers. But those 3 guys between 7 and 8 wins above replacement in that 2016 first round, and the number 1 head and shoulders above the rest is another Dodger, Will Smith, 19.2 wins above replacement. So overall, that draft has not produced, at least in the first round, a ton of stars. Again, as Wild the Innocent pointed out, second base, a little bit of disappointment. There was some fundamental issues defensively for the Rockies on Thursday. And Ryan wanting to know, why is Beck not playing? Not like he's the only one off to a slow start. As cool as the Martini story is, he's not the future here. And I don't know how cool the story is to begin with, to be honest. I mean, cool name for sure. It's great that he's healthy enough to make the team because, when he was healthy the last 2 years with the Reds, it was really solid. And, this is a guy too, thinking back on it, to me, Nick Martini will always be a member of the Las Vegas Aviators in my head. Because when I first started covering the Rockies back in 2018, and I went down to Albuquerque, spent a lot of time down there learning the AAA roster before I got my own promotion to the majors to cover the Rockies and get my credential. Nick Martini was having a big series for the Aviators, for the A's back in the early parts of 2018. So in my head, that's where he's at. He was at 28 years old, thought he was going to be this quadruple A player. And he's had, a decent little big league career. Of course, went over to Korea in 2022. So it's good for him. But Beck not being in the lineup, is it just because there's a right-handed starting pitcher and you want to get 2 lefties in the lineup like Mickey Moniak and Nick Martini? Yeah. But at the same time, you've got to be able to allow these young players to have some growth and face same-handed pitchers. You've got to do it. It was a while until Ryan McMahon finally got the opportunity to do that. There was an opening day, I think it was 2021, when Josh Fuentes started at third base. Ryan McMahon wasn't even in the starting lineup on opening day as one of their best players because Clayton Kershaw was on the mound. So you don't want to start too many left-handed hitters against Clayton Kershaw. You just got to let these guys play. And thankfully, the saving grace right now is Michael Toglia continues to play. Now, I believe he's at 12 strikeouts in his 21 plate appearances. So north of 60% strikeout rate right now. That's really bad. But it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Wins and losses are not important this year. They haven't been important for the last 3-4 years, despite the fact that the team has made investments in the current year's roster and hasn't made certain moves at the trade deadline to actually improve the future of the roster. So if you want to win games in 2026, 2027 and beyond, just play these young guys. Set them up for success, sure. But Jordan Beck not starting 2 days in a row, that just doesn't seem necessary. I don't think that's something that's going to happen later on down the year, but even still right now, not ideal, right? Also not ideal, the fundamentals, Tyler Freeman getting picked off by Taijuan Walker with Doyle at the plate. There were 2 outs in the top of the third, but still, Rockies got a gift in the first when Alec Baum error put Tovar on first, and then you got to strike him out, throw him out, where Tovar gets gunned down by JT Realmuto. Tovar's second caught stealing already of the season. He's now 0 for 2 this year. Overall, Ezequiel Tovar is not a guy. Look, he's got to learn how to steal a base. There's times in which you need to do that. But if it's not necessarily one of those moments, you're not really giving the green light to Ezequiel Tovar. He's 17 for 29 right now in his career. That's 58.6%. That's not good. It's not. It's a little surprising too, right? For a shortstop that has the kind of range that he does have. I think he's got a lot more pop in his bat than he does speed in his legs. But the general accepted practice in baseball amongst front offices and coaching staffs is if you can't steal, if you can't be successful, 75% of your stolen base attempts, you're doing more harm than good to your team. And so Tovar now 0 for 2, struggling to get that first stolen base under his belt. You also had in the 8th inning a pass ball and a wild pitch between Kinley and Jacob Stallings that allowed an insurance run to score for the Phillies in the bottom of the 8th. And then again, you've got bases loaded in the 9th, and you've got an opportunity to put some pressure, maybe go into extra innings, maybe take a lead. It becomes a little bit harder because of the runs that were allowed in the 7th by Luis Peralta and in the 8th by Tyler Kinley. Peralta came in with 1 out and 1 on in the bottom of the 6th. And it was very strange to see JT Realmuto stealing a base on a left-handed pitcher, a catcher stealing on a lefty who's looking right at him. That's got to be pretty rare. I thought about, well, Realmuto's got about like average speed, so above average for a catcher, but maybe average speed. And I guess you catch enough games, left-handers moves to first base. He must have known it well enough to be able to steal second base. Peralta gets a fly out for number 2. He walks Brandon Marsh, and then Marsh gets caught stealing to end the inning. That becomes very important because Kyle Schwarber then 440-foot home run to make it 2-0. Jeff saying, just tuning in, I am really struggling with how this offense is failing to produce. We finally have some decent starting pitching for the first time, and who knows how long, and every other piece falls apart. It's true. I mean, I talked about this Tuesday night over on the Blake Street Banner channel on YouTube with Noah Spyrick about, actually, I think I talked about this on Monday's post game for the Philadelphia home opener, is that it's like a 4-legged stool. You've got to have strength in all of those legs of the stool. And there's always one for the Rockies that fails. And truly good teams, they've got more stability in those 4 legs a majority of the season. That's what's going to get them across that 500 threshold. And it happens very rarely, and that gets them to the 95 win threshold. And then you're elite when it almost never happens. And you just, hey, you beat us. We didn't beat us. You beat us. You were the better team that day. Whereas when it comes to the Rockies, they are beating themselves just a little bit because you need all 4 aspects to come through. The starting pitching right now is getting it done. The defense on most games is getting it done. The bullpen, touch and go, and the offense just not doing it at all. You're not going to win games when that happens. And you're not going to win games when you're playing against superior talents. The Phillies had the best record at home in all of 2024. And, they've put a hurting on the Rockies. I think since the 2021 season, the Rockies have won 1 game in Philadelphia. Maybe it was since 2022, since the start of the 2022 season. And when you're the Rockies right now, especially when you look at the division, where the Dodgers undefeated, the Padres undefeated, the Giants have lost 1 game, the Diamondbacks 4-2 entering Thursday night. You're looking up at teams that are better than you. That's going to happen, right? There's no strength of schedule in baseball of, oh man, and you got to go to this place and you got to go to that place. It's going to feel like that because the other teams are just better than yours. And the Rockies they've got to get everybody on the same page at the same time. And they're a couple of years from that happening. But they need to learn. They need to learn. These young guys need to learn in these moments, and they need to be given those opportunities. And if they're the ones that are failing, great. That's okay. You'd rather that than one of the older, more veteran types. Even if you're winning with the veteran types, that only is going to provide so much. And I'll say, you know what? Again, if you have a lineup or a rotation or a bullpen in which 40% of the contributors are veterans, that still means the other 60% are either guys still establishing themselves or they're unestablished altogether. They're young players. So I think there is a little bit of credence to, having some value for some of these veteran players to lead the way. But at a certain point, I understand why a lot of the fans are saying, hey, enough is enough. Like, these older guys aren't going to be around very long. And you've made tons of investment and you've been talking up this farm system for the last 4 years. Let's start to see some more of those guys. Nobody that's in the bullpen has been talked up because they're relievers, right? Like they're great. There's guys that throw 100 miles an hour. Again, you ask anyone over at Blake Street Banner, they're going to be able to tell you the best relief pitchers down in the minor leagues. That being said, 4 of them might make it to the majors. And the other 6 that can throw in the high 90s never even get a sniff at a cup of coffee because they're relievers. And there's other starting pitchers that it's not going to work out for them. They're going to convert to become relievers, like a Jeff Criswell. You saw how good he was last year when he finally got the call up. Jaden Hill, eventually starting pitcher, became a relief pitcher. That's just kind of how it goes. So if you've been pumping up all of these really good young players, got to give them a chance to play. And maybe on Sunday, we're going to see one of them. I'll get to that in just a second. Ryan pointing out in the chat, quote, "We're not afraid to play the young guys," says Bill Schmidt. Rockies proceed to sit Jordan Beck in back-to-back games for Nick Martini. Matt saying, Senza played the Houdini act again, 10 hits, giving up 1 run, which was not even earned. It was unearned. Incredible, right? Yeah, the starting pitching has been really solid, at least earned run average wise. Like even if you take Senzatella's 0.0 ERA out of the equation, Rocky starters have been really good. Only 4 of them right now, but they've been really good. Entering Thursday, they posted a 1.61 ERA to begin the season. I went back and looked since the start of 2019. In 2019, keep in mind, the Rockies were good in the first half. The Rockies were good up until about the first week of July. They had the last wild card, the second wild card owned up, not sewed up, but they were in that position. They were fine. They were doing well before it absolutely fell apart. That being said, since the start of the 2019 season, that's 5 years. That's half a decade. Rockies had the worst winning percentage in all of MLB, 413. So they just been downright bad. But the team ERA, so starting pitchers mostly, team ERA during the first 3 innings of that span since the start of 2019, dead last in all of baseball. And yet the starters in innings 1 through 3 through the first 6 games of the season, 1.00 ERA. Only Ryan Feltner's 2-run first inning on Sunday has been the only run or unearned run allowed by Rockies starting pitching. It's pretty great. The offense, again, another collapse by them. Too little, too late. Top of the 8th, Bretton Doyle had a 1-out double to try to make things interesting. At that point, it's only a 2-1 ball game. Tovar grounds out to the left side, which means Doyle now can't move up and advance to third base. And there were a ton of pitches in that 9th inning, I think in the 8th as well, that JT Realmuto looked incredible behind the plate and kept the ball in front of him. But if Doyle's breathing down your neck at third base, that ball could skirt away from Realmuto, get by him, and then you have a tie ball game. But you can't do that if you're hitting a ground ball to the left side, which is what Tovar did. And then McMahon down on strikes to Jordan Romano. In the 9th, their rally, it was Hunter Goodman walking. Get used to that. Teams are going to be walking Hunter Goodman a lot going forward. And he's in a really comfortable spot right now where I don't see him expanding that strike zone. So if it's face Hunter Goodman with either nobody aboard or first base open, you're going to pitch around him to face either Chris Bryant, Michael Toglia, Nick Martini in the number 5 spot, because those guys aren't as threatening right now. So Goodman walks to start the ninth. You got a single by Michael Tolia to get off the schneid just a little bit. Sean Bouchard comes in to pinch hit. Another single that snaps the shutout. So correction. It was 2-0 at that point in the eighth when Doyle got on. But again, because the bullpen gave up those runs in the seventh and the eighth, you are now further out of contention. The bullpen and the shoddy defense, they hadn't given up the runs in the seventh and eighth. You are much more in this game. Stalling strikes out for the first out. Kyle Farmer off the bench to pinch hit, singles to load the bases. And again, this adds a little credence to having a deeper bench. It does allow you to stay in some ball games a little bit later. Jordan Beck comes in to pinch run for Farmer at first base. He's the go-ahead run. Tyler Freeman strikes out, only his first of the year. And then Brenton Doyle strikes out as well at a point in which Jose Alvarado is in the high 30s in his pitch count in the ninth. But the Rockies have 9 runs to their name. No, not 9, 10. They've got 10. They had 10 runs in their first 5, so 11 runs in their first 6 games. And that's the second fewest they've ever began the season. Tied for the second fewest walks. The 2015 club walked only 8 times, believe it or not, in their first 5 games, yet they started 4-1. Go figure. And they entered Thursday with only 3 home runs, tied with the Rays. Rays do not have a game on Thursday, so the Rockies are still in the bottom of the league in terms of power. So that's something that's got to change, and that's something is going to change starting Friday, back at Coors Field against an Athletics team I think is talented. I think they're skilled, but they don't have any momentum right now after playing the first half of the week in Sacramento. Not looking great. Cubs just knocking them around. That ballpark's going to be, it's going to be really interesting. Sutter Health Park in Sacramento might feel like a worse environment to play in than Coors Field for the A's this season. That would not surprise me one bit. So despite being 1-5, can the Rockies win this series against the A's? I have no doubt that they could. No doubt that they could. Not that they're going to, but that they absolutely could in this series. Other than Thursday's game, Rockies have led the first 4 games of the season, which is impressive when you consider this time last year when it wasn't until May that they finally had a game that they weren't trailing. 31 games to start the year was wild. I want to get to some of the stuff about the home opener on Friday. Let me talk about Kyle Freeland. His scoreless streak ended after 9 innings, double off the left field wall by Kyle Schwarber, scored Alec Baum from first base. Mickey Moniak, we already missed a fly ball. He missed the cutoff man in Ezekiel Tovar on what could have maybe been a play at the plate for Baum. Maybe. We'll never know. Bases loaded. Following some defensive miscues, Schwarber escapes a massive jam where, after not striking out anyone all game, he mows down Kyle Schwarber, Alec Boehm, and Bryce Harper. Talk about the difference a year can make. 38.47 ERA after opening day last year. And then that trip to Philadelphia where he's the pinch runner. And then he gets absolutely trucked by Jeff Hoffman. An embarrassing moment there. Big difference right now. 2.13 ERA, gets another quality start on Wednesday. 6 2/3 innings pitched, scattered 9 hits, didn't walk a batter, struck out those 3 in that big inning and allowed the 3. Hunter Goodman's certainly been on one. Homer and a double on Wednesday to give him 5 extra base hits. Up through that point, up to Wednesday, he had more extra base hits than the entire Rockies lineup, who only had 4. It's been great to see him not only slid up to that number 4 spot in the order, hitting cleanup, but starting every day. Besides Doyle, Tovar, and McMahon, Hunter Goodman has started every single game. It's been the first 2 as the catcher. Then game 3, he's the DH. I think that works out. That's good to see. The DH spot is not a total black hole. Speaking of which, Chris Bryant finally reached his 162nd game played on Monday. I missed it. I don't think I realized it until Wednesday morning, which is wild because after the 2023 season, I busted out my magnet schedule, my calendar to try and figure out, what game, if Brian plays every single game to start the 2024 campaign, when is it going to be? And it was going to be like May 6th. And then again, that falls apart and you just forget. Yeah, 159 games played over 3 years. So that first week, he's going to reach 162, and there's just so many other things to pay attention to and to talk about. But he finally gets that mark, gets a base hit on Wednesday to break an 0 for 11 slump to begin the season. Much better than last year, where he had to wait until April 3rd for his first knock. He had an 0 for 28 slump that dated back to the end of 2023. If you remember, Bryant did get booed at Coors Field for failing to come through. I think he didn't do a double play at one point. He struck out with the bases loaded against the Tampa Bay Rays, which ultimately they ended up winning with a walk-off grand slam by Ryan McMahon. But fans were chomping at the bit. They couldn't wait to boo him, and they did. And we're in a very similar situation for that to happen again. So it'll be very interesting to see not only what the weather provides us on Friday, but what's fan response going to be to Chris Bryant, A, just in the introductions, and then B, if he fails to come through early in the game. As I said, it's always gloomy in Philadelphia. Colorado hasn't won there since April 20th, 2023. 44-74 record in Philadelphia all time. Unbelievable. And the NL West, as I said, seems like it's out of reach. Going into Thursday, there were 10 teams with a winning percentage of .667 or better. 4 of those teams are in the NL West. That's where we're at. So let's get to it. The A's series, we're back in Denver. You've got Ryan Feltner versus Osvaldo Bido. It's going to be on Rockies TV, 2:10 start time. I'll get into the details of the home opener here in just a moment. Herman Marquez against left-handed starter J.P. Sears. That's going to be at 6:10. Also on Rockies TV Saturday night. The Sunday day game, 1:10 p.m. Righty Joey Estes, no relation to Sean, against to be determined. Who is going to make that start? It could be Bradley Blaylock. I think Monday was his only outing so far, so they haven't needed to use him. So you might as well slide him out of that long reliever role and slide Jake Bird into the long reliever role, and you can start Bradley Blaylock. No transactions needed for that. If you need to go down to AAA, maybe Tanner Gordon, maybe Anthony Molina for a spot start, as they are already on the 40-man roster. Carson Palmquist is starting on Thursday night in Albuquerque, so you can rule him out. This position on Sunday becomes all the more critical because, as Thomas Harding reported earlier in the week, Austin Gomber will not be ready for April 8th, the first day that he is eligible to come off the 15-day IL. So how much longer he's going to be out? He's shut down for right now. You're going to need more than just a spot start, at least 2, probably 3 starts. Does that mean it's time for Chase Dollander? You know how I feel about that. Home opener, spoiler, wear layers and a raincoat. The Tavern at Blake Street. Some of you out there know, oh man, Blake Street Tavern's coming back. No, something in that same location was supposed to be there. That was new. It was called the Tavern at Blake Street. They've already said, yeah, we're not opening. We've had a couple issues. We weren't able to get it all together. We weren't able to get our poop in a group like we would have hoped. According to the Rockies, sold out for the 33rd consecutive season yet. I think you can still get tickets on their website. Not sure what that's about. So let's get into the details. 7 a.m. McGregor Square opens up. So if you're really looking to do some super early pre-gaming, you can do that at 7 a.m. 9 a.m. is when the parking lots first open up. There's some opening day festivities also at McGregor Square. Milepost 0 opens up. At 10 a.m., there's a live DJ at McGregor Square. And at 12 o'clock is when all gates open. All fans, not just the first 15,000, all fans will receive a 2025 magnet schedule. By far my favorite giveaway day of the year. I wear out the space in front of my refrigerator, looking at the calendar, seeing who's coming to town, seeing where the Rockies are going, seeing what road trips I may want to visit. That's just a good giveaway, is the magnet schedule. I absolutely love that. Little underrated. Wild asking, is KB taking any infield practice before any of these games? Maybe. You won't see it because by the time the gates open up, the Rockies are done with batting practice and they're infield, outfield. I've said it before. When I was a young man, I can remember the home team usually getting their last licks because that's your hometown team. You want to go see them in batting practice. You don't necessarily care about the opposing team. That's just not how it goes. So you don't really get a chance to watch the batting practice of the Rockies. 12:20 is when the A's batting practice begins. They're recommending you get in your seats by about 1:15 because at 1:30 is when all the pregame ceremonies are going to begin. There's going to be 3 different ceremonial first pitches, including one by Pete Coors, one of the original stakeholders that help invest in the Rockies and make the Rockies a dream come true. They'll introduce the Athletics first on the third base side, then the Rockies on the first base. They'll present the center field flag, U.S. Armed Services Honor Guard, and local first responders. That's always awesome. National anthem is going to be performed by Stellar Brass with Technical Sergeant Denver Murphy, accompanied by fireworks. So that'll be magnificent. Rockies are going to take the field at 2:08, accompanied by fireworks. Yes, there's going to be a flyover. If it gets a delayed start because the weather's bad, is there still going to be a flyover? Probably. They can figure those things out. I can't guarantee it. So asterisk. I don't know. I don't know if there'll be a flyover if anything gets changed. Look, the fireworks are there ready to go right now. So I don't see why a 2-hour delay or something like that is going to change any of it. That being said, hopefully the baseball gods cooperate and allow us to get this game in at the normal time. Nothing gets impacted negatively. 2:10, we play. 7th inning stretch. They'll do God Bless America. Middle of the 8th inning break. The flyover pilots will get staff recognition. They're going to be on the Rockies dugout there. And then after the game, 5 p.m., live DJ at McGregor Square. I'll be down there at the game. So if you see me around or you're following me on the social medias, drop something in DMs. Maybe we can meet up. Usually behind home plate is where I'm at because that's where the press box lets out at. So I can just jump down from the press box, say hello on the concourse behind home plate. Gold gloves given out to Doyle and Tovar. I believe that's going to be Saturday. So Saturday is the t-shirt giveaway for the gold glove shirt that has both Doyle and Tovar. I believe that ceremony is going to end up being on Saturday. So you can get a good seat for that, get there early. That usually happens pretty close to first pitch. So you don't have to get there crazy early. Other tidbits of information, your Rockies tickets are digital, right? So make sure you access them before you go to the game. Make sure you get all that stuff together. Get the MLB Ballpark app on your smartphone ahead of time. If you're a Clear member, you can go in through Gate C, super easy, free of charge. I think the bags are still the same. It says, quote, only single pocket medical and diaper bags that are no larger than 16 by 16 by 8. So I think that means a single pocket bag is good, not a single pocket medical bag. No, it can just be a single pocket bag. Hopefully you've got one of those Clear bags by now. And I learned this a couple years ago when I was counting my pennies, literally and figuratively, and it was dollar hot dog night. And despite the fact that the hot dogs are available for us in the press box and you can have about as many as you want, you can't necessarily do the 9 by 9 by 9 because you're not drinking in the press box, but you certainly can have the 9 hot dogs up in the press box very easily. And yet I wanted one of the hot dogs from the concession stand, had my little dollar coupon, brought a dollar and a quarter. Because, all right, whatever tax is, a quarter is going to cover it. They said, no, we're cashless. You can go down to the team store, convert that cash into a gift card. And then I said, I'm out. So that's the old man in me there. But it's a cashless facility. Make sure you know that. Most people aren't carrying around cash in the first place. So looking forward to seeing everybody. It's going to be great back at the ballpark. Friday might be a little bit of a slog, but there'll be plenty of pomp and circumstance to make you feel good, make you feel welcome back at the ballpark and seeing some friends that you like spending your summers with. You like spending some of these Rockies games at, and the Rockies always make it interesting. I think that's just another major factor as to why attendance is always good. There's a lot of factors, right? There's the bar in right field. There's the visiting fans. There's people that choose to make Coors Field and Denver a destination when their team goes on the road. All of those things. But I also know it's the fact that when you go to a Rockies game, there's a really good chance you're going to end up leaving feeling good because the Rockies won. They've won more games than they've lost at Coors Field. And I think that's part of it. So, are we going to get a series win against the A's? It wouldn't surprise me. In fact, despite everything that I've seen so far in the first 6 games of the season, yeah, I think the Rockies are probably going to take 2 out of 3 from the A's because that's just how they do. That's just how they do. At Patrick D. Lyons, at Patrick D. Lyons, MLB. Please leave a review for this anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Go over on the YouTube side, leave a comment, thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. Those things go such a long way to help the algorithm and put me in front of so many other folks that are out there in the audience in Denver that love sports or that just love baseball. So I appreciate if you're able to do that. And I appreciate everyone that dropped by in the chat over here live on YouTube. Appreciate that momentum. Because as I like to say, momentum, it's only as good as my next show. So I'll probably talk to you from the ballpark with some exclusive conversations with Rockies players very soon.